Okay, so let's give it another minute. We are going to get started in just 1 minute. I know it says we are live, but I know some of you are having issues and it takes you guys a couple of minutes to actually be on this live stream. So let's talk about it. So I'm immigration attorney Connie Kaplan. We help immigrants everywhere make the United States their permanent home. And I have a special guest today, and I'm so excited about having her. This is Laura Marenko. She's from Golden Beacon, USA. Say hi to Laura, guys.
Hi, everyone.
Okay. Golden Beacon, USA helps new arrivals to the United States, new immigrants acclimate to the country. So it is the first line of defense, really. It is the helping hand that most immigrants need once they are in the United States. And Laura, you help people from everywhere. It doesn't matter where they're from, correct?
That's right. Anyone and everyone.
Tell us more about Golden Beacon.
So, hi, everybody. I'm Laura. And we help, as Connie said, we help immigrants and refugees to the U.S. acclimate to America. And we do that through e-learning videos on American culture and local resources, ESL tutoring, career coaching, resource referrals, so you can find service providers like immigration lawyers. And we also have social forums where immigrants can meet one another and share resources and advice with each other.
Oh, great. So I'm sure the people that are contacting you could use an immigration attorney. And believe me, when I talk to everyone that I talk to, and I do a lot of consultations, when I talk to them, they always say, so how do I do this? How do I enroll my kids in school? How do I get started? How do I obtain housing? How is there subsidized housing? And of course, the bad news, it's, not really. But we need to help you through that. So I am so glad that we are doing this. So we are going to address some of the questions that your resources and your people ask you, and I'll try to address them the best I can.
Sounds good. We appreciate it.
Good. So go ahead.
All right. Our first question for today is, how can people immigrate to the United States?
Okay, so first, let's clarify. Do we mean immigrate, as in move to the United States and form a life here? And I assume that's what you mean. Most people mean immigrate, moving to the United States. If that's the case, and I assume it is, right? Yes, okay. Then there are, generally speaking, 5 ways to get a permanent residency in the United States or be allowed to live here longer than, say, just a work visa, okay? And those 5 ways are diversity visa, lottery, okay? It gets open, generally speaking, almost every year in October. There is a minimum criteria that needs to be met, and then you apply, and it's like a lottery. You may get selected, you may not. So if you get selected, then you are invited to apply for permanent residency. You go through the process, and assuming you do qualify and you do all the paperwork that the government asks, then you can immigrate to the United States. The second option of the 5 is through asylum. That generally applies for people who are already in the United States and fear going back to their country for various reasons. Could be persecution, political, domestic violence, participation or being a member of a particular social group, and so on. And that is an option. Generally speaking, they need to apply within 1 year of arriving in the United States. And in some instances, you can apply as late as 20 years later, but that's very rare. Well, not very rare, just more rare than applying within the 1 year deadline. The third option is to apply through employment. So you are either abroad or already in the United States, but still in a valid status, and you have an employer who is willing to petition you for permanent residency. Your whole family, spouse and children come with you, assuming the petition is approved. Of course, the employer has to show that there is no qualified U.S. worker who can do the job. That would be the third. We have investment options for people who are, let's say, well off financially or who are willing to invest in a business structure in the United States for the purpose of creating jobs. So The investment amount obviously varies, and it really depends what country they are coming from. If they are, let's put it this way, it's a different investment amount for a manufacturing plant than it would be for a coffee shop, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we have the fifth option, the family option. This is the most common, where we have a U.S. citizen or permanent resident in the United States petitioning for their family members. And it could be immediate relatives or family preference, and they go through different options. Hope that answered your question.
It did. That was great. Thank you. That was a great overview. And since you brought up the family option, can you elaborate a little more on how immigrants can bring over their families to the U.S.?
Sure. So immigrants who can bring family here, generally speaking, are people who have been approved for asylum and they have listed the rest of their family on their asylum application. And if they have been listed, they are called follow to join, and they are going to follow, and they are coming to the United States. Other than that, it's only U.S. citizens and permanent residents who can petition for their family members. And it really depends what their immigration status is that will tell you or determine who they can petition for. For example, a permanent resident cannot petition for a fiancé, cannot petition for a brother or sister, but cannot petition for a parent. But the U.S. citizen may be able to petition for parents, children, unmarried sons and daughters who are over the age of 21. Generally speaking, those are the categories. There are other categories such as T visa, which are trafficking victims who may be able to petition some of the family members. The ones who cannot petition for their parents are special immigrant juveniles, because they just can't, under that category, petition for the parent that abandoned them.
Okay. And I saw that there's two different kinds of visas, the non-immigrant and the immigrant visas. Can you explain the difference between those?
Yes, and I'll be happy to, and I'll address one more. I'll give you a bonus on that.
Okay.
So non-immigrant visa is when somebody comes to the United States or wants to come to the United States for a finite period of time. So that is, they do not have the immigrant intent of remaining in the United States when they are applying for that visa. And that could be a tourist visa. Tourist visa could be for business or pleasure. It could be a J1, which is an exchange program. It could be a F1 student visa. Could be an investor visa, but they want to be here for a while and then they want to go home. There are 186 different types of visas that are temporary in nature. These are the general ones. Okay. Yeah. H-1B, for example, work visa, it's a temporary and it's non-immigrant visa. Actually, H-1B and L-1 are considered dual intent visa, meaning those people who are on H-1 or H-1B are considered both non-immigrant and immigrant. So they are on non-immigrant status, but they're also allowed to apply for an immigrant status later on. Immigrant visas are people who come here and as part of their process, they had the petition approved for them, either an employer or a family member. The initial petition was approved. They went through the entire visa process, and then their immigrant visa was approved. So when they come to the United States, they get stamped in with permanent residency. Which brings me to the bonus, because actually there is a big difference between visa and status. All right? If we are to think about it this way, our border, pretend it's the door to your house. The visa allows someone to come and knock on the door and say, "May I please come in?" Okay. And then you, the homeowner, can say, "Yes, sure, please come in. I'll allow you to stay here for 3 months or 6 months or 6 years, depending on the type of visa." Once you have entered in, that's your status. Okay, so the visa no longer rules. Some people call us, and it's actually quite common, where they say, "Well, I have a visa, and my visa is for 10 years." That doesn't allow you to stay in the United States for 10 years. That visa allows you to knock on the US's door for 10 years to come in. And then what rules, it's what the immigration officer at the port of entry says That's your maximum amount of time that you can stay in the United States for that particular visit.
And what is optional practical training?
Optional practical training is when people graduate school, okay, or they are in the process between bachelor's and master's, or they finish their master's to go to PhD. They have optional practical training where they are allowed to extend their visa for that period of time to be able to gain some practical experience.
Oh, okay. And then are they allowed to apply for the H-1B visa after that?
They should be applying for the H-1B visa as soon as they have an employer willing to sponsor them. However, H-1B visa applications are only accepted once a year. And they are in most circumstances. If they are subject to the cap, there is a limited number of H-1B visas that are granted each year. And they need to apply. It's actually in a lottery. They have to get picked in the lottery. And once they are selected in the lottery, then the government will look at their application. There are obviously exceptions to that, depending on the employer. Some of them have blankets. Some of them are not subject to cap. It really depends on the job description and so on. But yes, they can apply.
And what
they can
time?
also, from OPT or from F1 or whatever, they can also change status to others. I mean, they can go to a PhD, they can open their own business and do an E2. There are always other ways that are possible.
Okay. And what time of the year is this lottery open?
The H-1B, it's in April.
In April.
Registration starts in the first couple of months of the year. Every year is different. And there is always a significant number over the number of visa allotted. So let's say it's 55,000 allotted. There is a certain number of those separated for Chile and God, who's the other country? Anyway, it's separate, and then the rest of them are going into the lottery, and it's usually 5-1, 6-1, 10-1 applications. Yes.
Awesome. Well, so what is the process of obtaining a visa?
It really depends on the process. So let's talk non-immigrant visas first, okay?
Okay.
Well, yeah, we'll get into the COVID restrictions in a minute because that's a huge question right now. But let's assume everything would work normally the way it would before COVID and hopefully after COVID, okay? The normal visa process is for a tourist visa, and generally all visas, you apply for a non-immigrant visa at the consulate. They are looking over your application. You need to prove to them that you have personal, financial, and professional ties back home. Basically, you have family, you have property, you have a job. You have more reasons to remain or go back home than you have to remain in the United States, and then they will grant you the visa. All right, generally speaking. If it's an investor visa, if it's a different type of visa, then you have to have a whole application package with the type of investment, the dollar amount of the investment showing you actually spent the money, what your business plan is. If it's based on employment, you have to have the employment application package and the approval of the initial petition. So every single visa is different. But for all non-immigrant visas, you do have to show that you have the intent and to return and the means to support yourself while you are in the United States. For immigrant visas, you first need a petition filed in the US that needs to be approved, that after approval, it gets sent to the National Visa Center and it takes processing there as well. Right now, the backlog is 500,000 applications. And it's significant right now, and it's not because of National Visa Center, it's because of COVID and the consulates. And then they are waiting for the consulates to tell them how many appointments they have available. They book the consulate appointment, and then they go for the interview and come in.
All right. This sounds like a long process.
It's a very, very long process. Well, it depends. Fiancé visas, let's talk non-COVID, okay? So non-COVID fiancé visas the fiancé could be here in 7 to 9 months. Okay. Now there are people who have been waiting for over 2 years. All right. Those are the fastest because there is no backlog. There is no processing that takes place in the middle of the National Visa Center. All the other ones have a lot of processing that takes place at the National Visa Center, where you have to show that the petitioner has the means to pay you or has the means to support you and so on. So it's a lot more involved.
I see. Okay. And I know President Biden is working on our immigration system. Can you give us an overview of what he's doing to reform the immigration system in this country?
Hopefully. Oh, yes, hopefully. But the president has only so much power in the United States. Okay. When we are talking about a reform, we are hoping for a reform. Immigration reform, both sides of the aisle, both parties agree that it's badly needed. Everybody agrees that it's badly needed. However, how it's going to turn out at the end, it's going to be totally different than how it is as proposed by President Biden. Okay. The way normally it works, and there is that video on YouTube that says I am only a bill. It actually tells you the whole legislative process in the United States. You're making a proposal, it goes to the first chamber, which is the Congress. They debate all they want, they send it back, they want some changes, then it goes to a committee. That committee will review it again, send it back to Congress. Once they agree, then it goes to Senate, and there again, they debate, they go back to Congress. It goes back and forth so much. And then at some point, it will hopefully, and at the point where it's presentable and it's decent and it gets to the president for signing, and then at some point it becomes law after all the voting on all the chambers. So it's a long process. While we do expect that some changes, significant changes will happen, we do not yet know how. We do not yet know what shape that will take. And it would be premature to speculate, frankly, because it's still in the beginning. The process takes a long time. However, what can every single immigrant do right now to prepare for that is what we expect as immigration attorneys, and we go through this training all the time, and we know how it's going to turn out, generally speaking, without knowing. There will be some sort of requirement that individuals who are already in the United States for an X period of time, they will be able to find a path to citizenship. And if that is the case, there will be a huge backlog, and we are already backlogged significantly. And that backlog, you can get ahead of the backlog by having applications ready. And what I mean by applications, I don't mean get it all ready and ready to file, because you don't know what that it's going to be, but you can get your case ready. Most immigrants have been coming here and living in the shadows, okay? And if that's the case, they haven't paid taxes. Most of them have, but some haven't, okay? They haven't gotten an ITIN to pay their taxes because they think Social Security is the only way. Or they have not appeared anywhere on any records, school records for their children, or leases, or things like that. So they cannot prove that they've been here for the period of time that's required. And that's going to be the biggest challenge for most. The second biggest challenge in preparing for the reform is people who have minor criminal transgressions. You did an illegal U-turn, or, you had the reckless driving, okay? Things like that. Those things can be cleared out in criminal courts and will not affect their ability to become permanent residents. But it needs to be taken care of now rather than when this will pass. And no matter, even if this doesn't pass, it will still clear up your record. But now's the time to do it. Courts are moving slow, no matter how you look at it, right? Courts are moving slow everywhere, no matter where you are in the country. So knowing that, if you need to take care of something in criminal court, especially after the case is closed, and you need to do some sort of post-conviction relief, that takes time. It could take a year, it could take a year and a half. Do you really want to start this then? Because at that point, if I'm looking back, and we are not talking amnesty, everybody says it's going to be an amnesty. No, there will be no such thing. We do not expect such a thing, okay? So whatever reform it's going to be something that will have a finite amount of time to apply. 3 months, 6 months, maybe a year. You cannot afford to start preparing for that now. At that point, you need to start now.
So President Biden has not publicized exactly what he's doing. Is that right?
He has publicized, and it's a very extensive document, but that doesn't mean that's what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. And what is a proposal? It's not law. And even after it becomes law, or there is an order, an executive order, or whatever it is, first we need to make sure it doesn't get challenged. Then it needs to be published in the Federal Register. So all those things need to happen before an immigrant can apply for something.
And can you tell us what's going on with DACA recently?
Well, DACA was reopened and people could apply. And now we have a decision from Texas, from a judge in Texas, that put a halt to it, enjoining, meaning stopping the government from even touching those applications at this point. They will not be making decisions on those cases. The government does intend to appeal that decision. That doesn't mean anything is going to happen. Things with litigation, like I said before, they do take time. So no new DACA applications. They are going to still take applications for renewals based on the previous application and people who have had DACA before, but no new DACA applications.
And do you work with a lot of people who are DACA recipients?
Yes, we have many DACA recipients. Most of them, thankfully, they are in renewal, so it doesn't affect them significantly. We do have a few people whose cases are pending right now who are going to be affected by this, who are already affected by this. Luckily, one of them has another option as well. Mm-hmm. But yes, the other one is, they lost the money for the application, but it's still there. They are not going to make a decision, which also means they are not going to deny it. So that means it's just going to be there, sitting there in limbo for a long period of time. And sadly, this person will not be able to obtain a work permit until such time as they are reprocessing these applications again. We also do many temporary protective status applications, and those are in a similar boat, so to speak. They are also here temporarily at the behest of the government. For as long as the government wishes them to be. For example, Haiti, it just got renewed. Venezuela just got introduced. So those people are eligible for TPS. Venezuela was published in Federal Register. Haiti has not been published yet. So we have people who we have applications ready for, but we cannot file because the regulation is not out. On the other hand, for Venezuela, it's not an issue because it got published. So it really depends.
And how is COVID affecting immigration to America right now?
Oh boy. Let's address first the fact that the consulates have largely been closed. The embassies and the consulates outside the United States, regardless where they are, have largely been closed the entire year since March 16 of last year. Okay. We just had a big webinar last week. 500,000 applications are pending, waiting for appointments at the consulate. That's 500,000 people. And that includes workers, includes employment basis, includes families, that separates families, spouses, pregnant individuals, women with children. So they just cannot come to the United States. There were some consulates that have reopened and they are closed again. There are some consulates that are open, but they are open on very, very limited crew. And as a result, their processing is very limited. The current way they do things, they are prioritizing national interest applications, but you have to show medical supply, food supply, generally speaking. And then in order immigrant visas in some places, that includes fiancés visas, but you have to show that you have an extreme need. So you have to show exceptional circumstances for them to even take your application. Most people don't qualify for those. To meet the criteria for exceptional circumstance is just not happening.
Is asylum an exceptional?
Asylum is not at the consulate. Asylum applicants have to be already in the United States. So the consulate doesn't apply to them. Delays at the consulates are not affecting them.
Oh, okay.
It does affect, for example, if somebody had their asylum approved in the United States and now they are waiting for their spouses to come from abroad. But the situation is more dire, for example, for children who are turning the age of 18 or 21, depending on the category, and they are no longer eligible to travel or they fall out. And it's by statute. So it doesn't really matter what the government wants to do. At some point, they just won't be able to grant it. Mm-hmm. So that's a significant issue. It's also a diversity visa. People who are won on the visa lottery, and there's litigation going on that, but you know how litigation goes. Mm-hmm. People who won those, they cannot travel here because their visas are not being processed. And again, by congressional mandate, that needs to be done by a certain date. And that day has passed. So now the question is, these people apply, then what happens to them? Same thing, not granting visas, it's seriously affecting the labor market. Mm-hmm. Employers in the United States are counting on their employees to either return or come to the United States within the year that they applied. And that's not happening either. So it is very complicated right now, and it's just going to be ballooning before we see a solution. And nothing is going to happen until they actually start operating. But even within the United States, the COVID situation is not just locally, but it's also at the consulate in the country where the consulate is, right? So mm-hmm. Some countries have a much better control over the COVID situation versus others. So that will be different depending on the local situation. For example, even in the United States, some ICE offices, Immigration and Customs Enforcement offices, they have been doing in person for the past few months. And as of right now, they just said all appointments canceled beginning today. We have to do them all by email. Nobody needs to show in person, but this is what you still need to do, X, Y, Z. All right. Mm-hmm. So you're not off the hook just because they canceled your appointment. You still need to comply. And the changes, for example, here, the local office just claimed significant number of COVID cases increase. So that's what we are dealing with. Tell me what you see on your end.
Oh, with my clients, yeah, the same thing. A lot of waiting around. The legal process is very complicated for them, and they don't understand where to start or how to find a lawyer to help them. Yeah, it's been very difficult on our end as well.
Yeah, it is difficult, and I do a lot more social media now just so I can reach to these people, because it is just not. The worst thing is when you don't know.
Yes.
So I try, when you know it's going to take 6 months, well, at least you know it's 6 months. But when you don't know any of it, it's a problem.
Definitely.
And I just got a question from YouTube. Okay, it's a legal question. It's okay if I address it, Laura. You okay with that?
Yes, go ahead.
Can USCIS adjust status while there is a removal order? Okay, so the question is, if the individual has a removal order, can they get a green card? And it really depends. It depends on what they are alleging on the notice to appear when they placed you in removal proceedings, Makan, okay? It depends if you're an arriving alien, if you are an alien who is here without admission or parole. If you enter, then you overstayed your visa. It also depends if your removal order, if you are pending. If the removal order was issued, when was it issued? How was it issued? Was it issued in absentia or not in absentia? All those things make a difference. And in some cases, only the judge has jurisdiction. In others, only the court has jurisdiction. And yet in some, they have dual jurisdiction. So that is not an easy answer. Okay, hopefully that helped you. Good. Do you have other questions, Laura?
I just have one to wrap it up. If you could describe the immigration system right now in one word, what would you say? for our viewers?
One word? Just one word?
Just one word.
Hopeful.
Good. And why hopeful?
Because I think there is significant value to having the immigrants in the United States. They significantly add to our economy, to the labor market. The knowledge that most of these immigrants have and the skills that they bring is significant. So I do feel hopeful in the sense that the current administration sees that, that the business owners see that. And plus, I'm always a positive person, so I always see things like that. I'm very positive. If there is a solution, we'll find it.
Awesome. Well, I agree, definitely. Hopeful is a great word to describe it.
Yes, and hopeful, and we can never lose hope. If we lose hope, we lose everything.
Yeah, that's true. Definitely. Well, thank you so much for all of the information. That was a great overview. I appreciate it.
Awesome. If we can help any of your clients, you know how to reach us. Again, Immigration Attorney Connie Kaplan. We help immigrants everywhere make the United States. And I'm here with Laura Marenko from Beacon, USA and Golden Beacon USA, and they help immigrants acclimate to the United States once they're here or before they are here, and they have a lot of those questions. So please feel free to reach out to either one of us, and we will be glad to help you. Yes. Thank you, Laura. Thanks for having me.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for all the information.
My pleasure. Talk to you soon. And to all of you on social media, thanks for joining us.
Yes, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.